Beth. Thanks for being here. That's great. Jessica, what do you think? Should we rock and roll? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Brian Graham. I'm the school superintendent. It's a great pleasure to see you here in the auditorium with us and at home. Tim said we have about 12, Tim? 12 views? 17, all right, see? This is great. I love technology. I love that we can live stream this. I love that we still have people coming in, and I love that you're here today. I'm going to start by telling you some stories, and I've been doing this work for a bit. I'm 61 years old, but 61 is the new 41, so just keep that in mind as we process my career here. But really what's important is keeping kids safe, and that's really the big focus today. I'm going to share 3 stories with you that are real stories that happened here on Grand Island. And after these stories actually occurred, I sat with Jessica Hutchings and Cheryl Cardone, and we said we really need to do something, a workshop to help parents better understand the dangers of social media applications and how our kids are exposed to the entire world when they have these applications on their smart devices, and also provide parents with some resources and tools so that we can be empowered as parents in helping our kids stay safe when they have devices that open themselves up to the entire world. So this is my 10th year here in Grand Island, and I would tell you that a few years ago we had a middle school female student leave her cell phone behind at her home and wiped it clean. She left the device at home. She went out her window at her home and got into a car with a male adult that she had never met before. That male adult took her to Pennsylvania, and within 24 hours, law enforcement were able to track everything, even though this person wiped their phone clean and recovered our student, and that student was safe when they recovered her in Pennsylvania. So I was blown away by law enforcement. Every aspect of law enforcement were amazing. Danielle reached out. Danielle and Tom are here from the Secret Service, and they're going to present in a moment. Danielle reached out from the Secret Service to offer support for our situation, as well as did other agencies. The state police, the Erie County Sheriffs, the Grand Island Police. John Fitzpatrick, who was the middle school principal at the time, began an investigation internally, recovered in 24 hours. That's not always the case, right? And so what's important, I think, to help color this story a little bit is the abductor did something to convince her to wipe the phone clean and leave it behind. But not using that phone, law enforcement figured out a different way that this person was communicating with our student. Had nothing to do with our devices, had things to do with their devices at home. I'm not going to get into the granular details of it. It's a remarkable law enforcement investigation story that I'm so grateful to our law enforcement agencies for what they did within 24 hours. That's story number 1. Story number 2 is we had a female student attend a middle school dance last year. She brought in her cell phone, her smart device, and on the smart device was a friend who was attending the middle school dance with her. Now, this was a special middle school dance, so the kids were dressed up a little bit. The student was excited to bring her friend to the dance, and luckily, our principal, Dr. Felicia Palacci, recognized that this was not, a usual type of circumstance. And as she got closer, she recognized that this was a male adult on Snapchat, live video conferencing with a female student in middle school and in our building for the dance. So our principal took a picture right away and said, hey, show me your friend, let's take a picture, right? Very smart for our principal. And as the principal got closer, she heard the male adult say, I gotta go, and was gone, right? So another circumstance really saved by one of our administrators recognizing something was amiss, right? Something didn't feel good. And of course, the student was innocent, right? Loved that there was somebody, who was paying attention and providing reinforcement that way in her life. But wow, right? How close was that circumstance to being a difficult ending? And then we had another child last year who came from a different school district who, unfortunately, there was an adult in that child's life who was inappropriate and trying to groom and connect with this child. Luckily, we became aware of that, got law enforcement involved, and that case, ended successfully as well. So when you look at these three stories, real stories in Grand Island, it really makes me think, let's get together, let's talk. We're gonna talk in person, of course, with you today. We have people watching online, and we're recording this. So I will push this video out, and that will increase the views. We do this a lot. Jessica and Jessica's our social worker who is the coordinator of our Family Support Services programming. We do this a lot. We're never disappointed in the crowd because we know we have people at home. And then when we send the video out, it jumps to about 200 views, which is great. It's exactly what we want to do. So today, I'm just really, really glad that we're all here today to talk about this and what can we do to empower parents to have, to learn, right? To learn about these devices, how to establish parental controls, and keep kids safe. Does that sound like a good program tonight? Just a little thumbs up if we're good? Excellent. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Danielle and Tom from the United States Secret Service. Let's put our hands together and welcome them to the podium. Just before we click to the next slide, for people at home, there is a QR code on this slide. If you use your smart device and capture that QR code, it's going to bring you to a Google form where you can submit questions. We will have a question and answer period with the Secret Service as well as with our two amazing students, Caden and Marissa are here. But you can submit your questions by hitting that QR code, and then I'll capture it on my device. So.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Graham and Jessica, for having us here tonight. As Dr. Graham said, we are from the Secret Service. My name is Danielle Kingston. I'm an investigative analyst from the Buffalo Field Office. I am a Grand Island resident. I'm also a Grand Island graduate. And we are here tonight. I'm here with my colleague, Tom Barilari, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Tom Barilari. My official title, I'm a network intrusion forensic analyst. What I can tell you is that specifically Dr. Graham was speaking about the case in Grand Island, his very first story. I was a technical advisor to the state police and the sheriffs on that case, so I was the granular person, which obviously you're very aware of. So that's another time, another place. I'm retired from the town of Amherst Police Department, where I was a patrolman and a technical services officer, so I spent a lot of time running down these investigations. If you can imagine, there's 3 school districts in the town of Amherst and a whole bunch of private schools, so we had very similar type cases that I worked on for over 10 years, investigating that type of situation. And I came over to the Secret Service 3.5 years ago, and I assist pretty much with every type of technical investigation throughout the country or whatever we're working on. And this is our passion, though, because most of us have kids or are related to young people that are in school, and we spend a lot of time making sure, as the chief of police in Amherst, who's retired now, John Ass, used to say, is we can't keep our kids safe, we have no business being police officers or having a police force, because that's our primary responsibility. So hopefully we give you some good content tonight, and we will obviously answer any questions that come up, and feel free to just not be specifically focused, or if something came up other than what we're talking about, that's semi-related, we'll certainly answer those questions or try to tonight. So we'll get started.
And as Tom said, just to build on that, I also have been at Secret Service for 6 years. I am an investigative analyst, so I don't work as much technical stuff as Tom does. I work more general investigations. Prior to coming to the Secret Service, I worked at the Department of Justice here in Buffalo for 10 years. I worked a great deal of internet crimes against children cases, child pornography cases, trafficking cases, and unfortunately, we don't always see people who are good people, and the stories that Dr. Graham told us tonight are unfortunately not great stories about children. So while we're going to be talking about some heavy topics tonight, they're very important topics, and you all being here definitely shows that you're very interested in protecting your children, and we applaud you for doing so, and we hope we can give you some useful tools and techniques and options as you move forward in raising your children and putting them on the right path towards success. So what do your children do online? So everybody thinks they know the answer to this question, and I have young children. My son actually last year was playing a game, Roblox. He's 8 years old, and it seemed like a very harmless game when he signed up for it, and I thought he was just playing with his cousin and things like that. And about a month later, I got a bill, and my credit card was charged a few $100s for some outfits and things that he bought for his little people to play with. And I was a parent who thought I knew what my child was doing online. And I was appalled, both at myself and my child, and also that he could purchase, that he could make these purchases. He doesn't have authorization to use a credit card, and of course he told me, "Mom, it's okay, you don't have to give anybody any money." And I was like, "Well, yes, honey, you do." And so after some back and forth and some very hard conversations, we were able to, talk with the App Store and get some money back and things like that. Needless to say, my son does not play Roblox anymore, and he's very limited as to the apps that he can have on his phone, or on his tablet, excuse me. He's not old enough to have a phone, thank goodness. So I like to think that I know what he's up to online, and we now only know the passcode to his iPad. He can't get into it by himself. But what I'm getting at is we don't know what our children are doing online, and especially if you have teenagers, I'm sure that are spending more time by themselves and out of your view, which I'm told, I don't have teenagers, but Tom can attest, because
Yeah,
he's
so I mean,
told me about his.
yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, as you guys know, from every age. And what are your kids doing online? I guess the lesson that I like to share, and if you can imagine, so my wife's a school administrator in a different district. So imagine being a parent, kids, their parents, they come home like, dad's a cop and mom's a school administrator. Like, we're no fun. Like, we can't have anybody parties at our house, and nobody's allowed to come over. And they made it. They're both in college. I think they're going to be fine. But the point is, I was the king of browsing history. If you don't know how to look at browsers or browser history that your kids, the devices that they use, it's a really hard lesson. But one of the things that we did when the kids were growing up was, we own the devices. So I own the iPad, and we own the computer. We also own the phone. And without being mean or tough on it, it's just the expectation was, this is what we're going to do, and if you want these devices and you want access to them, this is how we handle business. And, they're still figuring out ways to go around that, and, they made it through without, too much trouble, but I definitely, we set the expectations, which was very important, and they knew that any time we can check it. Now, also, Dad being a forensic investigator was a whole nother situation where, there was a threat of the phone would come to work, and I can unlock it any password you give me. So, it's kind of wasn't really a fair fight, I guess you could say that. But the point is, with Danielle's slide, and specifically is, at least know a little bit, or let your kids know that you're going to check to see what they're doing online, or just do an audit once in a while. Where have they been? And if you go down there and you realize that they're deleting the browsing history too, you should be aware of that, and let them know that this is one of those things. And some of the new apps or some of the new browsers, you could actually be notified, and that's a whole nother conversation if they're deleting those things or where they're actually going all the time. So it's just an option. So.
And as for the apps themselves, of course, I think there's obvious apps that your children, you might know that they have, the Instagram, or, I think those are probably for older people now, Instagram and Facebook and even TikTok. But these newer ones, especially ones that we've seen used in more obscure ways, Kik, WhatsApp, more encrypted messaging, things that more nefarious acts are committed on, that maybe people don't have to have as much verification as to who they are. I mean, you can set up an account with, a name of John Smith. There's no sort of verification as to who you are or what your age might be. You can fill it out with bogus information, and oftentimes even your child could do so. Maybe trying to see content that might be out of their age range. Maybe they do it to see something like that, and then all of a sudden they're getting inquiries from people that think that they're older than they are. And definitely in my past life at DOJ would see that all the time, as people would create these profiles and things like that, and would get in contact with other people, and before you know it, it kind of snowballs into this whole situation where they open themselves up to being contacted by people they didn't necessarily seek out.
Not that everybody would know this, but if I write a subpoena or a search warrant and send it to a company, probably like a Hoop or a Yarn, and they don't have any U.S. presence, and I ask them, hey, I need every content from this username, and first of all, they don't even have a law enforcement portal. That's like a first sign for us. Now, as parents, you wouldn't necessarily know that, but if it's the basic stuff, the Snapchat, the Instagram, even the iPhone iMessaging, things like that. These are large companies. If your kids are communicating on those apps, I'm not saying those are good or bad. I mean, they're going to communicate, but try to keep them to the mainstream, because at any point, and Dr. Graham mentioned this specifically about if we get a username on a Snapchat account, or we get a username at Instagram, or any of the major ones, Facebook, Messenger, I can call them, or there's probably a retired law enforcement person that works there, and we have their number. I can call them at 1 in the morning and say, hey, we got a missing kid. We have I need an exigent circumstance, a warrant, or information, and I also want to know exactly where that phone last communicated, lat and long, or an IP address, so I can kind of run these things down. So the point is, with these apps, be very careful on what they're doing, and we do this presentation when we talk about apps to seniors a lot. We have a national program called SOS, Save Our Seniors, because seniors are on there, they're moving around Facebook, they think they're going to use a little bit of their money and make money in crypto or do something. That people are trying to go after the largest amount of resource or wealth in our country is seniors. And the first thing they do, the bad guys, is they move the senior off of the app to WhatsApp, which is an encrypted app, which is actually a legitimate app, but all the communication is encrypted. So even though we can tell they're talking to somebody, the contents we can't see. So just keep those in mind. A lot of these apps nowadays, the content is encrypted. Now you have your child's phone, you can see they're talking to this person. You can usually see it if you have the password to get onto those communications. But if we were to, if it was deleted and we were going to go to the company and try to get them after the fact with a legal process, the data's gone, the information's gone. So it's very hard to go backwards and kind of track this stuff. So I guess the point is on the apps is be careful what apps your kids are using and pay attention. They're going to use their TikToking, they're snapping their friends. They don't want to lose the snap. Come on, help me out here. What do they call that? They're always snap. Like, you got to keep your streak. Yeah, streaks, right. You got to keep your streaks. You know, my kids are 18 and 21. I think my daughter's still doing, the 18-year-old's still doing streaks. But just stay to the mainstream apps and, know what apps your kids are putting on it, or restrict the apps that they're allowed to put on their phone. That's also important.
So we're going to move into the more difficult categories of online risks: inappropriate content, cyberbullying, privacy, enticement, sexting, and sextortion. We'll try to focus more on stuff having to do with teens, because I think that's probably the most vulnerable of communities. Hopefully younger children aren't engaging too much in meeting people online and things like that. I think that's hopefully not, something that parents are encouraging at a young age to, at least with apps and things like that. I think that gaming and things like that should all be amongst just people you know. First thing that you should do, and like I said, all of you being here tonight is something that I'm sure you're already doing, is talk to your kids. Ask them. Make sure you're getting them comfortable with talking to them about uncomfortable topics, building healthy relationships with them, letting them know that it's not okay to talk to strangers online if they're either approached, as Dr. Graham said earlier in his remarks, that sometimes they're, it makes them feel special. It makes them feel like maybe they're getting some attention. It makes them feel important, and that you want to let them know that it's a very scary world out there, and there are not people that usually have good intentions when they're seeking out younger adolescents, especially. You don't want to make them fearful of everybody in the world. I think that that's sometimes something we struggle with in our profession. It's hard not to be, but you want to make them develop skills that make them good judges of people and their intentions and things like that. But especially online, and when they're approached by people, it's good for them to have a good understanding of what that relationship would look like. And you want them to be able to come talk to you, that if maybe they have gotten contacted by somebody and they have responded, you want to make sure that they can come to you even after they've done that. You don't want to make them fearful, because that, we've seen situations, unfortunately, where kids feel maybe isolated once they have done that, and they kind of get themselves even more barricaded and are fearful of coming to talk to you. So just keep that line of communication open and honest with your child, that there's nothing that they can't come talk to you about, even if they have made a mistake or done something that you wouldn't be happy about or something like that.
Kids are taking pictures. You can say, I could probably poll everybody here and say, okay, do you think your kids take pictures of themselves, even in the mirror? I'm talking fully clothed. They take a picture of themselves, send it to their friends, maybe a guy they like, whatever. Whether you believe it or not, they're going to have a strap down on their shirt. They're going to try to be a little more provocative. They're trying to meet people. I worked on 3 cases last week, completely separate. It was two high school boys and 1 high school girl. They were all taking pictures of themselves without clothes on and sending them to somebody who they didn't know but thought that this person was interested in them. The next thing you know, this person who, 2 were in North Africa and 1 person was in, we think, the Philippines, and these are straight up like sextortion. send a picture of themselves. These are high school kids that are 15, 16, roughly. And now the person who's scamming them or sextorting them is asking for money. And it's not a lot of money. It's like, 20, 50, 100 bucks. A lot for them. Next thing we know, one of the kids, I'll just stick to one of the kids, he asks his mom, hey mom, I need money, this is what's going on. Mom actually gives him the money, doesn't know any better, thinks like this is gonna go away. Oh, if my son gives him 100 bucks, whatever. So long story short is the parents were divorced. The dad found out about it, who's an attorney. He called Buffalo PD, they ended up calling me, and there's a couple factors going on here. The kid was, as Danielle said, extremely depressed, freaking out. Whoever was sextorting him said he was going to release the picture to all his friends, knew who all his friends is because did a little research on who his groups were and people he was talking to. And this is a very dangerous situation. We do have kids that have committed suicide in these situations or have threatened to hurt themselves, and obviously that's the worst case scenario. All three of these worked out where we were able to convince these kids that, like, okay, these pictures aren't going anywhere. The second part of that, though, which is important for parents to know, is there's a way to handle those pictures. Takeitdown.org, without going too deep into it, you probably have access to that or are familiar with it. So if you go to your social worker or your counselor in the school, or somehow contact us. But there's an organization, and I think, does NECMEC run that?
Yes.
Or okay.
It's
So
cybertipline.org.
yeah, cybertipline.org. So I was able to actually take the phone, extract it forensically, and push the pictures up in a appropriate way to takeitdown.org. So any app, anywhere, pretty much based in the whole, definitely in the United States, but other countries that work with us, and they have a unique signature of these pictures, and if they show up on any of their servers, they'll get wiped out. And so a lot of times it cleans it up. And it's not, believe it or not, they've expanded that program to adults. So if you're a kid and it happens, we can help it. Even adults that have been sextorted, they've sent a picture like on a dating app or they met somebody, and then all of a sudden they're getting sextorted. So without going off topic too much, keep that in mind that we can help and we can get those pictures taken offline. And we use legal process, but these other companies, like even the Snapchat, like they want to legitimize themselves. The current director of security for Snapchat used to be the director of the Secret Service, so he's been leading a big charge with anything related to that too, even with all the companies that do this type of online or apps, things like that. So just keep that in mind.
Other inappropriate content besides things that are sexual in nature are threats of violence, children doing inappropriate things, either, beating each other up, using hate speech, drug use, underage drinking. There's been a lot of videos and things in the news as of late, kids doing things that kids have a tendency to do sometimes. And unfortunately, that can bring out a lot of embarrassment for kids, and a lot of shame, and those things can spread like wildfire amongst phones, as you well know. And so things like that, if your child sees them, and I'm sure they get reported to the school oftentimes, and the school has to deal with them both on a punitive level, as well as it can turn into a cyberbullying situation. So even talking to your kids about that, about maybe not spreading those kinds of things, that even if they receive it, not being somebody who passes it on, just kind of that cyber etiquette, if you will, to not kind of perpetuate those bad situations, because it just all kind of compounds itself. It's a very, there's a lot of wonderful things about living in the world we live in and how technology has advanced so many great things, but it also has a lot of very unfortunate consequences, and our children are seeing it every day, and it's in their faces all the time. So kind of spinning into that, to the cyberbullying aspect of it, examples of it, creating fake profiles, spreading rumors about people that aren't true, but again, it gets to 5 people, who sends it to 20 people. And before you know it, I mean, what something, back when I was in school that one person said to somebody in the lunchroom that maybe said to somebody by the weekend, and then the next day it was forgotten about, or, I mean, it used to go so much slower, and now it just spreads so much quicker. And that can be very detrimental. Something that used to happen over the weekend, you wouldn't find out about until Monday, and by then it was kind of old news, so to speak. Now you find out in real time, and it can be hurtful. And sometimes people do it intentionally, post things intentionally to hurt people. So it can be very impactful on your child's emotions, on their mental state. People, as you know, algorithms are designed to keep kids scrolling, to keep adults scrolling. That's just the world that we're, currently living in. So, things to look out for your children if they are either a victim of cyberbullying or engaging in cyberbullying. If they're constantly on their phones, which I think is probably not a great signature, because I think everybody's constantly on their phones. But just their reactions when they get on their phones, when their phones are taken away from them. You want to make sure that they're not withdrawing too much from you, that you're making them check out for good time with quality time with family and friends and things like that, and just checking in with them about their use of social media and their intake of the news and things like that.
There's hints here, and what we like to say or like to explain to parents of kids this age, there's a lot of hints. So if you're paying, you know your kids, their baseline, how they are when they come home, how they are when they get on their phone. Are they having fun? Are they not on the phone? Are you hearing from their friends that, hey, whoever it may be, he's been kind of depressed lately? Like, pay attention to those little signs. I always say, like, we have about 18, 19 years or so to kind of get to the point where we're like really good at understanding our kids, and we have a relationship to the point where you can kind of know if something's not right. And if something's not right, have that conversation with them. Have a friendship with their with some of their good friends. My son would come home with his friends, and they'd come in. It used to drive me crazy. Most of the kids would say hi. If there's a kid that didn't say hi, I wasn't rude about it, but I would actually get up and say, hey, what are you up to? We had a kid across the street for tea. I think he was kind of shy, but I used to get in his face a little bit and say, hey, what have you been up to? Whatever. And now that kid when my son comes home from college, he comes over and he's like, hey, Mr. Barrelari, how's it going? Whatever. And you just have to have a relationship, because these are your kids' friends, but I'm not saying you have to be friends with them, but you want to let them know, like, hey, I'm engaged. I know what's going on. You just want to figure that out, because you can know if there's a difference what's going on with your kid. And cyberbullying seems to be exactly what causes these changes in these moods. And when I was at Amherst, so it's only been 3.5 years since I've been retired from there, but we've had the school district where a kid takes his own life, and it started off cyberbullying. And it wasn't just one school district or within the town, it was several. And you'll see those, you can almost see them weekly throughout the country if you started doing research and searches for things like this. These are preventable. I think they're preventable because we could pay attention to what's going on, and also try to intervene ahead of time before it gets out of control. Were we talking about options? I'm sorry. We want to just talk about what you can do, like tech options for this?
I think we'll get to
You'll get to it?
That's
Okay, go ahead.
Online privacy, what's okay, what's not okay. I mean, this is kind of, just some basic stuff, what to share, what not to share. I mean, creating live videos, of course, Dr. Graham kind of touched on that. That's, it can be very dangerous. I think going live is kind of a risky one. Checking in, sharing your location, also very risky, especially if you're out of town, traveling somewhere. Even, pictures, family and friends, things like that. I think, of course, if you have like a locked account or a private account, and again, Tom will get into that when you talk about tech options, what you can set to private and things like that. I think that that's very important to do. But even just personal information, your address. I mean, something as simple as posting a picture outside of your home and your number, your house numbers in the background, things like that. If you have a public profile, you just showed everybody where you live. You just showed everybody, your license plate number. If you're in front of, and honestly, I mean, it's something we use all the time. I mean, for me personally, social media is something that I rely on for my job all the time, because you can find out so much about somebody on the internet because people put their entire lives out there. So, I mean, as an investigative tool, it's great, but in terms of your kids' privacy, which is probably the most important thing to you, you want to make sure that all of that is extremely, extremely locked down. And even for your own self, safety is paramount. Conversations with unknown people, again, we went through that, and then sending or viewing and sharing pictures. Vulnerabilities, we kind of talked on that. Sexting, consequences of that, addressing it. You want to talk about healthy relationships, starting conversations early, talking the ways about things can spread online, how quickly that can go. Want to go through, kind of went through sextortion. Do you have anything else to share about that?
No.
Grooming, we can kind of touch on. Dr. Graham had said that they had an incident in the district last year when somebody had moved in from out of district, but you might always say, like, maybe that it wouldn't happen to my child, but you definitely, you want to watch for it. I mean, it could be somebody in all the experiences that I've seen and cases I've seen, usually is somebody who is close to a family or a situation. It's not a total stranger. You would like to think that you know everybody around you, but things to look out for are, somebody who's trying to impress your child, have them trust you, have your child trust them, give them gifts, have them keep secrets, kind of gain that trust, and your child will want to keep that relationship, to themselves as well. So usually it's very manipulative, and so you want to just, you can never be too careful, in my opinion, with something like that.
Without going like too much into being like, we're giving you all these tools, or we're giving you little ideas that parents have to think about, and not to overwhelm you, but I always go back to the people your kids are talking to, no matter who it is, if it's a close family member or somebody, a new friend or somebody in school. Everybody here that's here tonight has a gut feeling that their kids might be, doing some of these things that we're up to, or, going on inappropriate apps or sending things that they shouldn't be. Not in a huge sense, but you have an idea and you want to keep your kids safe. One thing I learned, and I can just tell you this, I'm a brand new cop. I'm 28 years old. I'm driving around in a police car. When I became a better cop is when a year or two in, I drive by and I wouldn't make an excuse for, like, why didn't I stop that car, and I drive away. Or I drive away and say, why didn't I stop that car, even though something caught my interest. A couple of years in, I'd start to realize, no, something happened, like I'm not going to say, like, people say, like, spider sense, but the hair in the back of your neck comes up. It's not like that in law enforcement, but it's like that as parenting. The parents know this doesn't seem right, but a lot of times you'll make an excuse like, maybe just having a bad day or whatever. Don't let that go by the wayside. If you have a feeling that something's going on, and I know we're talking about phones and technology and things like that, and that's just so happens that's what your kids are walking around with every day. But no matter what's going on, don't make an excuse, and don't just brush something off. You don't have to get into an investigation every time, but you can say, hey, you came home today, you seem like you're a little depressed, something going on, and they might not say anything, or they might say, yeah, I didn't do well in this grade or this class, or you suspect that might have happened, so you go on, I don't know, what your system's called, like in Williamsville it's called WITS, but you go on WITS and you look at their grades real quick, like, oh, they got a 75 on a test when they probably thought they were going to get 90. So have a reason reason to ask them or talk to them, but don't let it, don't let that little hair on the back of your neck go unfeathered. Actually ask what's going on. So just something, a little tip that we like to do, because there probably is something going on, and it can lead to something more.
And that kind of leads into be a trusted adult. If, God forbid, something does happen, stay calm, respect their boundaries, help them identify other trusted adults, either at their school, with law enforcement. If you do need to act on something, if something does happen, remember that you're there to be their advocate and their ally as they, go through, if they need to, go through and have any other steps be taken, whether it be, contacting law enforcement and, if they ever become a victim of such a, any sort of internet crime or something like that.
Yeah, so one point I'd like to make, this SRO program, and I know Grand Island does a great job with it, and all the SRO programs, especially in this region, because a lot of the superintendents are tuned in. I don't know if parents know this, or this is something, hopefully this is not something new, but the police officer in the school is not necessarily there to, put hands on your kid or make arrests. That is really like, it's a school resource. It's a resource. The right police officer in a school setting obviously is there for, the ultimate issue if there were something that there was a catastrophe. There's a police officer there that can protect the kids and hopefully protect the school. But ultimately there to be a resource. And I'm not saying they are the trusted adult, but most of these police officers, if they're trained properly and their SRO program is going very well, which I understand it and goes well here, just because a police officer is told information, they don't always act on it, or they don't always have to go out and make an arrest or get the kid in trouble. They're there to try to right the ship, or to be a resource and give them advice, or try to get them to go in the right direction. So hopefully that's happening here. I'm sure it is, because it's an incredible program, and it could be part of that trusted adult. As a parent, you could also be that trusted adult, and it doesn't have to be for every aspect. I mean, I have, my 21-year-old who is a senior in college, the little freshman, was there for 2 weeks, and she was struggling. They're actually at the same college. They're struggling. She's struggling because she's homesick. And she told us everything. She tells us everything. She told us she was, a little depressed. We asked my son, he goes, I was the same way, but I'm not going to call and tell you guys. And it was just one of those things where it's kind of like they're completely different kids. She's doing great now. It's only been, she's been there like a couple months now, but it's just interesting where we thought that we had all this information, and my son tells us a lot of stuff, but he didn't want to tell us he was homesick because he just wanted to tough it out and kind of make it through, which he did. But remember, just, be a good listener, because they might tell you something that you're going to be really, really angry about, but you have to learn how to try to get an even-keeled mindset and just listen to what they have to say, and try to give them resources as opposed to always having them be in trouble.
Maybe you could do the what to do together, review the privacy.
Yeah, so we could talk, I was going to talk specifically as we kind of get to the end here, is what to do together. When you're deciding to hand the phone off to a kid, and even if you're going to hand a device off and the phone is not on the internet, or not necessarily on a cellular device, our kids had phones at the beginning. They were just on Wi-Fi, so we let them use them in the house, or if they did take them to school, they could actually make Wi-Fi calls from the school, things like that. Review privacy settings. Like, this should be something you do together. Understand that there's adult or child settings on the phone. You can go through your phone carrier. The phone carrier will have software or apps that you can put on the phone to restrict what websites, age-appropriate things like that. It's something that you should do together with your kids so they understand. Blocking unwanted persons or accounts, and then if something does come up, having the kids be able to tell you, this is some of the things that this happened to me, or somebody sent me this text, I don't know who this person is. They're just trying to engage in it. And if they have enough information, they certainly will tell you, like, I don't know what this number is, or this number came through and said, hey, how's it going today? And he didn't know who it was, but maybe they just wanted to, like, communicate. Explain to those kids that's like a smishing email or a smishing, SMS message or a phishing email, that they're just trying to engage somebody to see if that's a real person on the other line, and then there's some scam behind it. There's going to be some type of scam of some sort. So loading up contacts in your kids' phones that are only family members or close friends. So when you see a phone call coming in, you could peek over at the phone and say, hey, oh, that's grandma calling, or that's, Joey, his friend down the street. Not random numbers or people that you don't recognize. And, the phone should be set up that if it's a number you don't recognize, that it goes to spam right away and doesn't even ring on the phone. So things like that. There's entire programs, I think NECMEC might even have those programs where you can download from their website. It's almost like a checklist when you are about to hand your kid the phone. This is what you should do. So just something to think about.
Pretty good so far. We're going to invite Danielle and Tom to sit at the table with Hayden and Marissa. And this will be a question opportunity. Jessica Hutchins is going to moderate this for us. But I want you to be thinking about questions either from the lens of students or the lens of law enforcement in order to hear the respond to those questions. And once again, people can submit questions online. So if you guys could join us, that'd be great.
Okay. Marissa and Caden, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Could you start by telling our audience a little bit about yourself and when you first got whatever type of electronic device was the first thing you got, and what rules or parameters were put in place for you at that time?
So hi, my name's Marissa, and as I said, I'm a senior in high school. My first ever device was I got my sister's old iPod, and it was probably middle school time when my other friends were getting their phones, and my parents had strict rules that I was not going to get a phone until high school. So that was my way of communicating with my friends. It was only available with Wi-Fi that was connected to our house. So that was the only time that I could use it, was when I was at home. And then it ended up being, because of like other circumstances, that I ended up getting my phone the summer before 8th grade. So I ended up getting it a year early. But once I got that phone, my parents were trustworthy enough with me that they didn't have to set any parameters or anything. I did have screen time where I was only allowed a certain amount of hours per day on my phone, but there wasn't like specific privacy for specific apps or anything like that.
My name is Caden Sharkey. I got my first phone at 6th grade, and I was given it to make sure that I was able to call my parents on time and make sure that they're there to pick me up and have that resource of calling them. So if I was stuck somewhere, I was able to call them, have them pick me up, or go places. And since I play baseball, I have to, I'm everywhere. I'm at this baseball diamond over there, and it's 30 minutes away, and I call them to make sure that I can get home safe. And yes, I have gotten screen time, but that's really it. That's really it.
Thank you. Why do you guys think it's important for parents to limit the amount of time that their child is engaged with a screen?
I can start.
Okay.
I think it's important because kids spend too much time on their phones, especially last year. I noticed a lot of kids were on their phones during classes, and I can only imagine the amount of time they're spending on their phones at home. And you don't know what they're doing on their phone. You just know that they're on their phone. But if a parent does put screen time, that limits the amount of time they're on their phone. And I feel like that's helping them in the long run, because that helps lengthen their attention span and make them pay attention to more classes and help them out.
Also going along with what Kaden said, I feel like that like in this day and age, it's inevitable that kids are going to have phones and they're going to have social media and they're all going to be connected, because that's how our generation is. We're connected through like Snapchat, like they were saying, like texting each other. So even like with this school year, with the new cell phone ban that we've had, we've seen, like personally as a student, I've seen a lot more social interactions with kids, and I feel that if we like take it outside of school, where we're also like limiting how much screen time kids have outside of school, it will only like lengthen those, like Kaden said, like lengthen their attention spans and able to lengthen their social interactions. And I think it'll just overall help the kids as we continue to grow up.
Thank you. We'll do one more question, and then we'll open it up to those who have joined us in person or those who are joining us online. Can you talk a little bit about how parents can use parental controls to approve apps before their children are able to download them to their devices?
In certain apps, they have settings, and sometimes in that app, they automatically make sure that your location is on. So you have to manually go in and press off to make sure that your child doesn't have their location being sent out to the app. And that's for many apps like Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, and so many more apps. And there's a lot more in those settings that you probably want to look at, because it can send out data to those apps, and that data can be sold to people on the black market.
Yeah, and going along with that, like even before like a kid is able to download an app, I know that there are some apps that parents can have on their phones that connect the child's phone to your phone, where you can get an alert every time they want to download an app onto their phone. So if you do that, then you still have like the control to see what specific apps they are downloading, to make sure that they aren't downloading anything that they shouldn't be. And I think that like when they showed the 20 apps earlier that like students need to, or that parents need to know about, if you see like something going wrong with that app or something, I think it just gives you another sense of like control that you have over your kid, but not like an overprotection type of way. It's like all just trying to keep your kids safe.
Thank you. At this point in time, I want to open it up to the audience. I'm sure some of you have specific things that maybe you want to inquire about. You can ask questions of Marissa or Kaden or Danielle or Tom. I'd love to give you the opportunity to do that if you have questions you'd like addressed. Go ahead.
Here, I'll start.
Okay.
So I think that you're like right on with Snapchat. There's different features that like I would see why you would be like concerned about getting it for him. There's like different features, like there's a My Eyes Only, where only there's a password connected to it, where like if the kid's the only one that knows the password, he's the only one that can see what's in it. Or there's like Kaden was talking about with like the location. There's like a setting where anybody can see your location. And then there's like two different settings where it's like at any time they can see your location, or specifically when you're on the app they can see your location. So there's different stuff like that. And then there's also one section like called Quick Ads, where there's a list of people that come up. You may know them, you may not know them, but with the algorithm they can see how like you might be connected to that person and that you might know them, and then you can add them that way. So there's just another thing that you might need, like you might know. But I think it's a very difficult line, because that is how I feel like most kids communicate. Like we don't communicate usually through like messages anymore. It's like when I text my friends through Snapchat. So I see where like the struggle would come in, because that is how usually the kids like talk and text to each other recently. But yeah, there's a lot that goes on with Snapchat.
Yeah, my mom and I didn't get Snapchat until I was in 8th grade, and I only got it because I'm like, Mom, look, there's all my friends, they're using Snapchat, and we did extensive research, and I had to really convince her to get me Snapchat, and she had a lot of questions that you had, And I'm like, look, I'm not going to be sharing my location. I'm not going to be doing this. I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be adding my friends only. I'm not going to go through the quick ads and add every single person, have the whole globe added to my Snapchat. I wouldn't do that. But there are certain situations where you can actually look and see who's added. And yeah.
Just to speak to Snapchat, if you didn't get a chance to jot down those two features that Marissa mentioned, they were My Eyes Only and the Quick Add feature. Those were the two features that she mentioned. I also want to take a minute to point out, I've given all of you a handout that says Parental Controls that Work, a guide for Grand Island families, and the first subtitle there are Snapchat safety tips. So you can, the quick add feature is actually on there, so you can go in and change those settings just based on those tips.
Can I just make a point on, My Eyes Only? Just if your kids are currently using Snapchat, and this could be for people paying on, and you decide you're gonna take the phone and take a look at My Eyes Only, be prepared to see things you probably don't want to see. But I'm telling you, it's a dangerous container that has stuff in it. So just pay attention to that. But definitely know where that is and know that your kids know. And you may even just tell them, hey, listen, I know what this is. So before I look at it in the next hour, you probably want to get rid of what's on there and give them a chance. Just an option.
Other questions for any of our panelists? Go ahead.
My top 3 that I use are personally probably Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok.
My top 3 are probably Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok.
Go ahead.
I mean, I would say, it's more difficult for us because, as Tom said, we have limited ability because a lot of these apps are not law enforcement friendly.
When we do forensics, the top 3 are definitely Instagram, Facebook Messenger. So we're looking for content. I might have a phone from somebody who overdosed, so I'm looking at who did they talk to and what app did they use to communicate with. Or we have a victim who's a senior who was on Messenger because they knew Facebook and they're talking to somebody, and then they got convinced to send $250,000, and they moved them off Facebook to WhatsApp. WhatsApp or a Signal, some type of encrypted app.
Yes.
But any type of communicating app where you can just move back and forth, and it's really easy to use. Obviously, Snapchat. If I'm texting my kids from my Google phone, believe it or not, I don't have an iPhone, and it aggravates them, and they're not answering me right away, and I know where they are, I'll just go on Snapchat and snap them, and then mysteriously they communicate back to me right away. But yeah, I think these guys, they're straight, they're dead on.
Yeah.
Other questions? Go ahead.
I honestly don't use Discord that much, but I know a lot of my friends do. There's a ton of group chats that you can go in, and you have the ability to do voice calls, message people, and sometimes there's rules and what you can do and what you can't do in some Discords. I'm trying to think if some of them are really bad. There are corners of Discord that can be really bad, but there are also some Discord servers that are actually really good.
I personally have never used Discord, so I don't know anything about it at all.
So it's something it's similar to Reddit or something where you would have you're interested in some particular activity or
More of a chat room, a chat focused,
Yeah.
like a
Gamers
Reddit.
use it a lot.
Yes.
Yep.
We see it more in our protective intelligence. I've seen it more in our protective intelligence mission in terms of like threats against our protectees.
So they'll go in there, will be like, and they're not just like, it's not a Trump bashing or a Biden bashing, it's whoever, we have protectees on all, aspects. We have the entire family of the current president, we have former presidents, we have,
Agency heads.
agency heads, things
Yeah.
like that. So we sift through Discord, like we have people, intel analysts that are constantly looking at that. And they could talk all they want. I mean, obviously we live in a free country, but when they start making threats like I'm gonna kill this person or I'm gonna find out how, that's where we kinda get involved and
But
have to
they're
do more
more
investigation.
focused, like you said, and
Yeah.
some can be, darker, but they're more, it's more chat-based, like a Reddit or something like that. But again, certainly, it's an app, so certainly it could be, it could be joined by, it could be on
The
child's
gaming kids
device.
love it.
Yeah,
They're looking for cheat codes, they're looking for ways to, how do they win
get
the
through
game
levels
yeah,
or things like that, yes, absolutely.
Other questions? Kaden and Marissa, can you?
Hold on.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go for it.
Oh, yes.
Not a calculator.
It's not a calculator. Looks like a calculator, but it's actually like a, it's kind of like a fake. It's actually like a folder. Well, it
Put
looks,
pictures in.
it's an icon,
Yeah.
but you can go, and it's a platform to trade, messages and pictures and all that kind of stuff on it, yeah.
Usually the password's the same password of the phone or whatever it is, but it's another one, if you see a second calculator app on your kid's phone, let them know you're gonna go look at it, maybe give them about 15 minutes.
You're very generous.
I
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
So my question is, families are more inclined now to give smart devices to young children at elementary age, right? If a parent chooses to give a tablet or a smart device to a child 8, 9 years old, would you recommend that the parent has more control over that device and sets parameters maybe in the settings so that the child can't just be out on the entire internet accessing and communicating?
I can speak to this because I lived the Roblox disaster of 2024. So my son is 9, and he's had a tablet for a couple of years now. He got it for Christmas. For probably like 2 years ago. But he has very elementary apps, right? So he has like ABC Mouse and some reading apps and some puzzles that he does and things like that. He no longer has Roblox. That was a very short-lived endeavor. But his app store is set up through an email that only I know the password to. So he can only get apps on his phone if I enter the password. Of course, I put Roblox on, then took it off. But he can only get an app if I put it on there. But now we've even taken that a step further. He can only open his iPad if either me or my husband puts in the passcode. He's very big into fantasy football. He loves fantasy football. So he has a team that he made on ESPN. But even if he wants to check his scores, he has to bring it to us, and we have to manually put in the code. So absolutely, there has to be some, because otherwise I think that they would just go into the App Store and start clicking stuff. I mean, it's for nothing other than it looks fun, I think that they don't have the capacity to understand what things are. But certainly I think that there are, I think in the App Store even you could, only do like a kids under 14 and things
Yeah.
like that. And even on, what are the other things that they have, the Amazon, what's their thing?
The Kindle.
The Kindle, there's like a kids version. But even that, I don't think, I can only speak for myself, but even by and large, talking to parents of kids in the district, I feel like 8th grade is the goal for most parents. That's my goal.
Know your device. Like one of the biggest
For a
things.
phone.
I'm a tech person, obviously, so I'm into it, and I'm downloading these phones and trying to break into them and things like that. So it's my job to know all this. But as a parent, you should know how your device works, and give them the same device you have, because you know how that phone works, and understand the parental controls. very simple, and that way there's no surprises when you find out that they downloaded an app that you didn't want, or they were able to shut off a VPN that was, Verizon had this thing for a little while where they had the kid's phone on a VPN, so it was controlled by you. Well, the kids were shutting the VPN off. It was like the simplest thing in the world, and trust me, they're gonna Google how to get around the parental app that my parents just put on the phone. So just knowing what it is, and then grabbing that phone once in a while and opening it up, making sure the password's the same, and looking for the second calendar app, or the My Eyes container if you're going to allow them to have Snapchat.
Also, another thing, and I remember this from a case years ago, check their notes. Sometimes they keep different passwords in notes, different passwords to apps that they shouldn't have, and they're hidden photos. That was a big one. We had one girl, and she kept a lot of hidden photos, and she would keep passwords and even phone numbers of people that she would meet online, and things in the notes and the hidden photos.
So we're trying to break in and I say like I'm breaking into a phone. I have a search warrant from a judge, a state or local or federal judge. So I'm not just doing this because it's fun. So when we get into it legally and we're in the phone, the first thing I do is we go to the notes, because I might have 3 or 4 more devices by this person. This is a bad guy, and I'm trying to figure out what his password is. And the other thing too is we use so many other. If the guy's in jail, this is kind of a funny one. It's not like it's not new, but they have a commissary or they have a code when they use the phone in jail, and they always usually have like a 4 or 6-digit PIN code. 90% of the time it's the same one to get in their phone. So it's always a fun time to call the sheriff's, the jail guard, and ask them, hey, what's so-and-so's PIN number? And it's usually pretty close. But know your kid's PIN code too, or set it up for them and say this is what you're going to use.
We referenced parental controls a little bit. I just want to point out to you in the slides that I passed out, and if anybody didn't get a copy, I have more up here. We have QR codes right in there for both Apple and Android devices, so that you can literally go in and set these parental controls that our panelists have been talking to you about. Other questions? I would like to close with one more question for Marissa and Caden. What is the best advice you have for parents who are considering giving their child a tablet or a phone?
I would say wait until you think it's the right time to do it, because if you give it too early, it could really seriously affect what's going on in their developing mind. I know this because someone that I know was given a tablet very, very early when she was 3, and she's very distant from her family and very antisocial, and it's really depressing to look at, because when I first met her, she was very outgoing, curious, and just really wanted to see the world, and now she's very antisocial, and it's sad to see. So I say just wait until you think the time is right.
Also, I think that you know your child the best. You know what like they were saying, their mannerisms, you know how they are. But also, I lost my train of thought. I don't remember what I was gonna say. Oh, don't give into pressure that your kids might bring home, because I know when I was a 7th grader and I didn't have a phone, I felt like I was one of the only kids that didn't have a phone. So I'd come home every day being like, Mom, Dad, can I please just have a phone? I'm the only one. I feel left out about it. But you know your child. You know what's best for them. So I'd say don't give into it. You just know how they are and what's best for your kids. So.
And they're building off of what Marissa said. You are the adult. You know what is right, what is wrong. You have a better mindset of what goes on in the world and what goes on the internet and on the cell phone. You might not know everything, but you have better judgment compared to a 7th grader or middle schooler or high schooler.
Danielle and Tom, do you have any advice for parents who are considering giving a device to their children?
Our high school kids that are standing here, they hit the nail on the head. say it was probably 8th grade going into 9th, and the only reason why it was 8th grade is because my son was swimming, at the high school, so we had to be able to communicate with him. And it was very restrictive. I can tell you the freshman year, driving my kid to school, his freshman year, first day, he didn't have a phone because he got it taken away. So that was an interesting week of stress for the family, but you know your kid, and I think when they approach high school is probably appropriate.
I concur.
Okay.
For anyone who's joining us virtually, we will be uploading the handouts from tonight to the website, as well as pushing them out with the video link for tonight from the recording. So if you're joining us virtually and you're wishing you had copies of those handouts, you will be able to access that information. Any final questions? No? We're good?